What's up, Flick Connection? This is Darren, and today I want to share with you something really interesting I found hidden really deep inside the new Blade Runner 2049. So this is going to have spoilers just out of necessity, but if you haven't seen the movie, you're not really going to understand what I'm talking about anyway. So this video is definitely for people that have seen the movie. I highly recommend it. I've already done a couple of videos on it. Watch those, go see the movie, come back and watch this because it's really interesting, and it's just, I think, the start of sort of the discussion that can be had about this movie and all of the rabbit holes that we could potentially go down. So, for those of you that have seen the movie, you may not have noticed, but you will probably remember hearing this, I'm going to call it a ringtone, several times throughout the movie. And this was typically just heard as Kay, played by Ryan Gosling's ringtone on his, I guess, phone and device, and you hear it several times. It happens to be an excerpt from a Russian children's symphony from the 1930s called Peter and the Wolf. So the title immediately got me interested, and you've heard the whole thing. I'm playing a little bit of it in the background. You know it sounds familiar. It's a kind of a classic, so much so that Disney actually did an animated version. There's claymation versions, puppetry versions. There's a lot of different versions where it's acted out because it was created for a play in which a boy named Peter essentially tussles with a wolf. Now, without going into all the details, because there's multiple characters, and we'll get into that at the end of the video, it's about a boy named Peter and a wolf, and the wolf eats one of Peter's geese, and Peter is resourceful and manages to capture the wolf, and instead of allowing hunters to kill the wolf, Peter stops them and has them essentially put the wolf in captivity, put it in a zoo, is how the original story went, and that's basically it. It's just essentially a fable, and that's how it goes. Now, then I started wondering, okay, if that's the case, this must have been done deliberately. Now, who's the wolf? Who's Peter? And I'm basically starting with Kay and trying to figure out what the characters are, because there's also a cat that runs up into a tree that plays kind of a role. There's a bird, there's the goose, there's the grandfather, there's the hunters. There's all these different characters, and I immediately tried to figure out who's who. So I start thinking, well, maybe, Kay is Peter, Love is the wolf, or maybe Wallace is somehow the wolf. And I try all these different scenarios in my mind, and nothing really seems to fit. I don't really stick with anything. And then I realize, okay, it's Kay's device, but he doesn't seem like the type to just sit there and go through and pick out a ringtone. If you saw the movie, he seems like the type to just stick with the standard one. And Apple has their kind of standard ringtone that comes with your phone. Nokia had their famous ringtone that they were famous for forever. And most people just stuck with those. I'm fairly certain that's the case with the Wallace technology, which means this is a Wallace tone, which also means perhaps Wallace himself picked this tone out. Well, is Wallace the wolf? I believe Wallace sees himself as Peter. And there's some strong evidence to back this up. Now, even though Wallace is the villain in Blade Runner 2049, he doesn't see himself as the villain. He definitely sees himself as the savior of humanity and possibly the most important human being in the known universe. The megalomania on this guy, just in the couple of scenes that he's even in, is beyond anything, any of us have ever seen before. And so I think he thinks he's Peter. And this is supported by a short film starring Jared Leto as Wallace that came out before the movie was released. And if you didn't see this, I highly recommend it, but here's a clip.
Off-world colonies are thriving.
Insufficient to the needs of ultimate survival. Your laws
have changed the hands of progress.
Replicants will never rebel. They will never run. They will simply obey. Find a weapon to this now. You must make a choice. Your life or mine.
I'll give you a link to the entire short film in the description below, along with the other two that accompany it. But basically what's happening there is, because of the events of the original Blade Runner, where replicants have begun attacking humans, they've been outlawed. But because replicants are outlawed, it's sort of limiting how fast humanity can spread to other worlds in the known universe. And meanwhile, they're sort of dying out on Earth. They're not going to make it much longer on Earth, is at least what is suggested. And replicants are essentially a slave force that would allow them to expand faster. And this is explained by Wallace in the movie. But what this short film shows is that he's created obedient replicants, and that changes everything. So essentially, if the replicants are the wolves, as depicted in the original Blade Runner, they're the ones that are attacking and killing humans. If he sees them as the wolf, he's now captured and harnessed that, and it can now benefit humanity. So I believe Wallace sees himself as Peter and the wolf in the fable, and handpicked that little tone, and it's just a nice little subtle note. It's a nice little nugget, I guess an Easter egg, but it could be sort of the opening of a rabbit hole that goes deeper, that potentially gives you clues to what might happen in the future of the Blade Runner universe, and maybe what has happened in the past that we don't know about. So with that suggestion, I encourage you to read up more on Peter and the Wolf, learn about more of the characters, what their actions were, and how they played a role in that story, and how that might relate to other characters in Blade Runner 2049. I'm going to be doing more videos like this. I've already got one I'm working on about 2049 and how it relates to Pinocchio. I'm really getting obsessed with that idea. That rabbit hole was sort of opened up in the movie a little bit, and I sort of have gone down and found a lot of similarities. So subscribe so you'll catch that one. Share, like this one, share it with your friends. I'd be real curious to see you guys having discussions and then leaving them in the comments below. I'm real curious to see where this goes, if anywhere. But thanks for watching, and you will see me next time.